Now what happens if I don't have a perfect square trinomial already? Well, one thing to think about is, what do I want the number to be? What would that number need to be a perfect square trinomial? Hopefully you've seen enough of this particular case to know I'd want it to be a 9. So there's a couple ways to think about it. I'm going to kind of, use your intuition here at first, and then tell you the generalized way when you can't just see the number, or it's harder to keep track of the number. What do I need to do to make the 4 a 9? Hopefully see, just if I added 5 to both sides, I'd have x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 5, which is exactly what we did in the last problem. So that's one way to think of it. The way that is more generalizable is that if you subtract 4 from both sides, now you have a clean palette. And a lot of people like to think of it like this: plus blank. Right, so what am I going to add to both sides to make this work for me? Well, I'm going to add 9, right? Because I want that number to be 9. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. And how do I come up with 9? Well, I take half of 6, and I get 3, and then I square it to get my 9. And since I add 9 to the left side, I have to add it to the right side too. X squared plus 6x plus 9 must equal negative 4 plus 9 is 5. Again, the same problem. And I expect you to come up with a solution, but you can look at the answer above. I believe it's negative 3 plus and minus the square root of 5 is your x value. Okay, so make sure you have the solution there. But what happens now if it's not the same perfect square trinomial? Well, again, the process is the same. Add 5 to both sides, so I get x squared plus 12x equals 5. And there's a few things I think about when I'm completing the square. The first is my a value equal to 1? It has to be yes. If it's not, I need to make it so. So check. The second thing is c equal to 0? Yes, because I moved the 5 to the right, so there's no c value now. So I'm now set up for completing the square, and I'm thinking about plus what on both sides will give me a perfect square trinomial. So again, the relationship half of b squared will give me my ideal c value. Since b is 12, half of 12 over 2 squared, well, 12 over 2 is 6, 6 squared is 36, so I'm going to add 36 to both sides. So I have x squared plus 12x plus 36 equals 41. To factor that, I just take half my b value, and that becomes my square trinomial. If you're not confident that's true, you should expand this to see that in fact, I get 2 of my h's to get my b value, and I get h squared to get my c value. Now that that's 41, I can take the square root of both sides. So get x plus 6 equals root 41, plus and minus. Subtract 6 from both sides to get x equals negative 6 plus and minus the square root of 41. That's my answer. Again, square root of 41 is just a number. There's no perfect squares in it. So that's as simplified as I can get it. And that's my solution. Okay, so now we're doing again the process we're calling completing the square. And that's useful for two reasons. One is to get the squared quantity alone, so I can solve that way. The other is this will eventually help us graph parabolas to be able to get it into this format. And if we can't, it's going to be very hard to graph parabolic equations, which means it's going to be very hard to solve projectile motion problems where things are shot up into the air and you're trying to figure out its maximum height and when it hits the ground. So this is a very valuable skill to learn right now.